This is really cool. It is really intense.
Hey everyone, Tim with Ghost Towns, Washington, and today we are taking you out into the snow on a cold winter day here in Washington. And we are at a large copper mine complex that was first staked in 1897, and it was worked intermittently through the 1940s. And the first feature that we're going to share with you is the mill site, and you can make out the foundations of the mill right in front of me. You can see the different tiers there, and I'll put an arrow up to show you in case you can't quite make them out. And so I'll step back here a little bit. So you're gonna have to imagine that this entire area I'm panning across would have had the large mill structure where the foundations are, but there would have been buildings and infrastructure everywhere. And this was a very large and active site, and there's virtually nothing left today that would even give you an idea of what the scale of this operation was. It was a really large operation. The mines here, I believe, had over 12,000 feet of workings on 5 different levels. So this was a very significant copper producer for especially the west side of the mountains. So we'll go up and take a closer look at the mill site and talk a little bit about what we can see up there, and then make our way on from there. The first thing we're going to look at is the foundations here of the mill site. And the original mill that was here was built in 1918, and it was a 150 ton per day flotation mill. And then later in history, it was upgraded to a 200 ton per day mill. And years ago, I believe back in the 90s, possibly into the early 2000s, but I believe the 90s for sure, there was equipment still here. And at some point, that equipment was all removed and scrapped out. Unfortunately, it would have been really cool to see all that equipment here. So I am kind of up on top of the second or third tier of the mill site. And you can get a better look here at this concrete wall. But there isn't as much snow or moss. And then over here is where we would have had some pieces of equipment mounted. You can see these huge bolts coming out of the concrete structure there. So it was a little difficult to make out anything really significant at the mill other than the concrete foundations. with the snow and the growth and whatnot. So now we're going to go ahead and start making our way towards some of the mine workings and see what we can get ourselves into today. Before we start our way up the mountainside here, we thought we would stop and check out the number 2 portal of this mine. And as I mentioned, this was a multi-level mine. And all this discharge pretty much is coming either from right above or right out of the portal. Kind of a combination of both, I suspect. But that is the number 2 portal entrance, which is pretty well collapsed now. Definitely not going in there. And to be perfectly transparent, this portal's been collapsed like this for many, many years. We've been to this site a couple of times. We've just never stopped and made a video here. We made our way up the mountain a little ways from below, and we have reached the number 1 tunnel. And as you can see, it is a bit of a tight squeeze in there. So we're going to get our gear on and see if we can get inside and show you some cool stuff in there. So we have slid down through here into this portal. There's quite a bit of water in here. Looks like we have a little bit of a dam here where the water is backed up on that side and flowing over here. And some material. And it doesn't look nearly as deep on the other side. We got some, our first copper mineralization showing here. So to give you a little background on the mine, other than what we've already talked about, is the mine started shipping ore in 1902, and then the mine went idle for a period, and it resumed operations in 1916, and then it shut down again, and production resumed again in 1923. And that run continued to about 1930. And you can see the wooden rail that would have probably had strap rail on top of it, so the wooden beams, I guess is what I'm trying to say, they're under the water. And the primary purpose for the shutdown of this mine was, like a lot of mines in this area, was just simply financial problems. So after it shut down in 1930, in 1935, control of the mine passed to the workers who held labor liens against the property. It looks like we've come mostly out of the water now. And we're coming back to what appears to be a big collapsed area. And to give you some perspective, as you can probably see Drew, I'll bring my light down here, just make him out coming in behind me there. Quite a bit of water flow back here. Massive collapse back through there. And another one over here. And over here, you can make out the copper and the rock. See how that's staining. And this is probably some of the most unique shoring I've seen with the way this was notched out to lock the timbers together. Haven't seen it done that way in very many mines. That's pretty collapsed back in there. That up there does not make me so warm and fuzzy. See that boulder just sitting there. And you can see this notching on these timbers really well here. We have an old Seattle Times. Probably not that old, but can't really, I don't know if you can make out a date on it or not. It's got the comics in it. Oh, there it is. April of 2019, so not too long ago. Alright, this is where it gets a little interesting here. We got a ladder. looks like that goes up 40 or so feet, I'm guessing. So an interesting little tunnel and chamber. Obviously that would have led to a whole lot more at one time, but all collapsed now. So on the way in, I was mentioning that in 1935, the workers retained ownership of the mine. And in 1940, when the liens were satisfied, the mine went back to the bondholders, and then a few short years later, it shut down completely. And there are no records of ore shipments after around 1946. 1950 for sure, there was nothing listed being shipped out of this property any longer. So this property essentially was operated from when it was staked in 1897 to around 1946 with intermittent shutdowns. I'm trying to make my way through the cloudy water back out here as I'm stepping on rocks and you name it. All right, I'm going to turn the camera off here since you've been through here, and I'll see you back at the portal entrance. Made our way back.
It's a very tight portal entrance.
So we're going to make the crawl here the best we can out. And you can see this portal entrance isn't long for this world. It's just a matter of time before some of these bigger rocks fall down and block what little's left. So we made our way up the mountainside from the number 1 tunnel, and now we are at one of 2 stoped out areas. And these are pretty intimidating as they just drop down into the abyss, into nothing. You can see a massive amount of copper staining on all the rocks and the walls. So when Drew gets down here, I'll kind of have him stand somewhere to give you some scale. You probably can't see it on camera, but there's a hole in the bottom there, and it looks like it just drops into nowhere. And at one time there was a 5-story, roughly, wooden structure that was in the back of this. And some years ago, probably in the, I'm guessing, mid to early 2000s, that structure collapsed into the bottom. I'll see if I can find a photo, I believe I have of it, and just put that up for reference for you. Colors are just insane. Alright, gonna climb out of this thing. A lot of water, obviously, in this area, so it's sometimes hard to talk when the water is so loud, especially in a massive chamber like this. And you can see Drew down in there. Give you the scale of how big this stoked out area is. So Drew and I were just standing here talking off camera, and we are now looking at the opposite side from this large stope we just went in, where it goes down here. And I'll put an arrow up, but I'm putting my light on it the best I can, but there's a hole down there. And there's a story that says somebody tried to rappel down into that cavity, and I don't know how many feet we're talking, but allegedly they ran out of rope and they had to come back up, and that's how much of a bottomless abyss that hole leads down to. So probably not going to take our chances going down there today. So we are coming up on the second large stope, and I'm just going to give you a peek over the edge of the cliffside here, looking down on it. So we got to make our way down around to where we can actually drop down in. And there it is, coming into view. And from here it's really hard to give you some scale, but this thing is very, very large. It's probably 40-50 feet tall. I think inside in the mine records it's described as 5 stories on the interior. And here we are on the edge of the stope. That there are some skulls in there. Hopefully you can see them. We made our way a little ways down here into the stope. Back where you can see hopefully those timbers. Again, no shortage of copper. wash and staining anywhere around here. Right where my light is was a surface shaft, and it was filled years ago with foam, as it pretty much was on the trail that you would take to come up here. There's some perspective of the opening. You can see Drew standing kind of center there, headed back up. Here's a little closer view of the timbers where the manway was. And panning back around. Lots of copper here. Then we have this rock holding up this rock. So making our way across from that last stoped area, we came across a small adit here, which has a lot of copper staining at the entrance. Doesn't look like it goes too far in, but we'll go take a look here, see if we can get in here. It's pretty cramped and narrow. It's really cramped and narrow. So it pretty much ends right here, and there's some boards, and then it drops down 3 feet or so, 4 feet, and then it's just water. Squeeze my way back out of here. So we're making our way over to the last adit we're going to be able to explore today, with sunset coming soon. But as we were making our way over to the last adit, we came across this massive boulder here, and it had a little natural cave in it, which is here. And Drew was a bit leery, as was I, when we first came on it, because this is an area that Drew has had 2 cougar encounters over the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. But luckily everything was good, nothing there. And there was another one straight ahead that Drew was checking out and clearing to make sure it was all good as well. So we made our way out of the open woods. We were kind of side hilling it across the open forest from the stopes, and then we drop down onto the old mine to market road that we were looking for to get to the last adit for the day. And you can make out right here, clearly, there was a road here. Snow's a little better up in the woods here versus down below, but the ground is pretty soggy. It's basically a swamp. Holy crap. Okay, well, now I understand why Drew was yelling when he was ahead of me. I normally don't hike in rubber boots, but I knew where we were going, and I thought, well, shouldn't be too bad, but glad I wore them. I wouldn't recommend it for all the scrambling and normal hiking we do, but this road is something else. It is a swamp. Back into some snow. So we made our way to the last adit of the day, and it's another fun one. Another squeeze in there. And I took a peek with my light, and it looks like there's some water. I can't quite tell how much, but I guess we'll find out here momentarily. All right, slid down in the mine here. There's the Harl and Drew up there. And here is what we're dealing with. Definitely gonna get wet. We didn't put our waders on for this one. Don't ask me why. But either way, it is what it is. Perfectly clear water. Like some sleepers with spikes in it. So we have some sleepers and some spikes where there would have been rail at one time, but it was all taken out. Very clean mine. Right, speaking of rail, here's a spike for the rail. I'll get my lighting right here. There we go. Kind of turned into a concretion. All that material fusing with the rusted iron. Looks like there's quite a few spikes all over the ground here. Another one. We've got a can. And perhaps another can, maybe a tobacco tin.
More spikes. This is really cool. Got some really awesome color here from all the copper stain, copper wash. Got some pyrite going on back in there as well. Over here, that is really intense. Take a quick look closer here. It's really impressive. File. Carbide graffiti. Looks like 5/30 of 27. Another one over here, JS 1927. A lot more copper back in here. Just a lot of color showing in this one.
Yeah, it seems to fit the fog.
Just a lot of impressive color. Just a lot of impressive color in this mine. Just everywhere. Don't know if I showed this because I got distracted by all that copper wash. There's this really cool old makeshift little can turned in like a bucket here. In fact, it's really interesting is it's like that handle, it's got the copper wash kind of on it now. That's been maybe dripping down on it, I don't know. All right, gonna start making our way back out, back into the frozen water here. All right, so now the climb out should be interesting. We found what we believe to be a cabin site or maybe a workshop, and laying out here was this really cool forge. Seen several forges at mines in my time, but I've never seen one that looks like this. And you got this, it looks like maybe some sort of a handle on it, maybe to open and close a gate. And there's an E right there. And on top, it's really hard to make out. We'll have to clean this up the best we can later. But it looks like it says Whirlwind Blast. As perhaps the model of it. And then down here is the real hard one to read right here. But we can see where it says Ann Forge Company. I can't quite make out those first words. We're going to have to do some homework. Looks like maybe a B. I don't know. Probably the city or state it was manufactured in. Really cool forge though. Well, that's going to do it for this mine exploration adventure. We want to say thanks for coming along with us and thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to our channel. If you don't want to subscribe, that's okay. Just check back with us every now and again. Please remember to like and comment, as it really does help our channel. And until our next adventure, take care.